So let's go ahead and take a quick tour of the SolidWorks interface. Let's go to File, New, and we're going to create a part and click OK. This is going to give us a giant blank viewport because we have a blank model. We haven't made anything yet. And over on the left we have a list that has some stuff in it that we don't really care about, except there are a few planes here that will be useful to us, front, top, and a right plane. And up here we have a few view-related buttons that will be useful as we move forward. Here we have on the top a ribbon that has almost all of the tools that you'll use on a regular basis when modeling things in SolidWorks. We have a Features tab, a Sketch tab for making two-dimensional elements, and a Surfaces tab for making three-dimensional surfaces. In the Evaluate tab you have some relatively useful buttons, but I typically don't use the Evaluate or Dimension Expert tabs. Really, the main thing are the Surfaces, Sketch, and Features tools. Now, all of those tools are available in the Insert menu. You can see under Boss Base there's Extrude, which is the same as the first item here on our list. Also down here we have Surfaces, and in the Surfaces area we have all the same tools that you find in the Surfaces tab at the top of the screen. You've also got a lot of other stuff in the View menu that you can go through and find yourself. But for now, let's first go ahead and go to the Tools menu and go down to Customize, because I want to make sure we have a few things set straight. Let's go to the Options tab first, and I'm just going to click Reset to Defaults just to make sure that I have everything set to the default for your benefit. I'm also going to look on Workflow Customization and make sure that Consumer Product Design is checked, which is going to give us particular access to tools. And we'll go to Mouse Gestures, and over on the right where it says, for you it will probably say 4 gestures, and I want to go ahead and check the radio button for 8 gestures, which I find a little bit more useful, and I will show you what that means in a few moments. Let's go ahead and click OK, and now go to Tools Options this time. And there are a ton of options for SolidWorks, and they are broken into 2 categories. System options that are system-wide, that work for every document that you open in SolidWorks, and document properties that work only in the current document. In this case, we want to change the units of this document, so I'm going to go Document Properties and go to Units, and I'm going to change this document. I typically work in millimeters, which is why my default is set to millimeters, but in this case I'm going to be working in inches, so I'm going to choose inch pound second with the radio button. Click OK. And now we're ready to get started, and I want to demonstrate a couple things about the interface. So we're just going to make a simple block to start with. Let's go to the Sketch tab and click on Create Sketch. Now it's going to ask us where we want to draw our sketch. A sketch is a two-dimensional entity, so it wants to know what plane we want to sketch on. So I'm going to choose the top plane, and it's going to orient our view to the top plane automatically. So now we're looking straight down on the top plane. And I'm going to choose the Rectangle tool and just draw a rectangle. Pretty intuitive. Now I can either click on the checkbox here to commit my rectangle, or I can hit the Escape key. In this case I'm just going to hit the Escape key. And now I'm also going to draw a circle. There we go. And I can drag that circle around, or I can click on an edge to drag to change the size of the circle. Similarly, if I click an edge of this rectangle, I can drag it to change the size of my rectangle. If I click a corner, I can drag 2 edges at once. Now if I use my Smart Dimension tool up here, I can set the dimension of any entity in my sketch. So for example, if I wanted to set the length of this edge, I could just click on it, and that's going to let me set the length of that edge. Now I'm going to go ahead and do that. Let's set it to 3 inches, let's say. And you notice that's changed the width of my entire rectangle to be 3 inches. Now the reason that it did that, even though all I constrained was this top edge, I didn't tell the bottom edge to be 3 inches, only the top edge. But the reason it changed all of it is because these 2 edges are set to be vertical. That's what these little green things are. And by default, when you draw a rectangle, it's going to assume that the top and bottom are horizontal and that the left and right sides are vertical. If I didn't want that, if I wanted for this to be a little bit more free so that I could set the bottom edge to be a different length from the top edge, I would need to delete one of these vertical constraints. So I'm going to delete this vertical constraint. And now if I assign a Smart Dimension to the bottom, I can set that to maybe 5. And you see that now the bottom edge is 5 inches and the top edge is 3 inches. I'm going to hit Escape to drop that tool for a second. And lastly, I want to set the width or the height of this thing. Right now it's I can still drag the height. So let's set the height of our object to be 3 inches in this case. And I'm just making something. You don't have to do this exact thing. This is not our coffee press yet. I'm just demonstrating. I can also measure to the center of this circle. Let's say we want that to be 1 inch. And I'll set another one to the bottom. Oh. There we go. Do a dimension from the bottom to the center of the circle. And as we constrain this, let's go ahead and say that we want for the center of this line to be at the origin. So I'm just going to click the origin and then control click on this edge. To multiple select, click the origin and then control click something else. And that's going to give me this menu over here. It says add relations. So I can add a relationship between any two elements. In this case, I want for this origin point to be always at the midpoint of this curve. So I'll just click the midpoint constraint, and now this entire shape turns black. The reason it turned black is because it's fully constrained. If I click and drag, it goes nowhere, because these dimensions, in combination with this relationship here, this midpoint constraint, forces this shape to be exactly what you see here. I can't change anything. In fact, if I add another dimension, let's add a contradictory dimension on purpose. I have a 3-inch dimension here. Let's just add another one right there. Click. Now it's going to say, uh-oh, you have 2 dimensions that are telling me the same thing, and one of them is going to win out over the other. I got to do one or the other. Which one do you want? So I'm just going to click cancel. So this is a fully constrained sketch, except for this circle. We haven't defined how big it is. So once again, I can click my smart dimension, give it a dimension, like 1.25, and there we go. Now, when I'm editing a dimension, I can double click on it, and I can type in a value if I like. I can also drag this little bar here to change in this case, increments of 0.05 of an inch. And to commit that, I can go ahead and click the checkbox. Now, I have a finished sketch, and I'm ready to do stuff with it. So let's go ahead and click this button up here. This is for commit sketch. Down beneath, this would cancel our sketch. We definitely don't want to cancel because we've done all this work. So let's click on the commit sketch button. And now we have a 3D sketch in space. Now you can see that I have a sketch over here on the left side in the list. I've also got it in the viewport. I can click it here, it selects it in the list, and conversely, if I click it in the list, it selects it in the viewport. Let's click on the Features tab, Extruded Boss, and then it's going to ask us what sketch we want to extrude. So I'll click on this item here. It'll move our view, and now I can click this arrow to change how deep our extrusion is, or I can type a value over here under my blind dimension. Let's call that 1, and click OK. Now, there are a couple things I want to go over about this viewport before we stop and actually begin modeling our coffee press. First, if I middle click in this viewport and drag the mouse, it will rotate my view around. If I middle click and hold the Shift key, it zooms in and out. And if I middle click and hold the Control key, it pans around. I can also zoom in and out using the mouse wheel. And so those are the typical ways of panning around my model to look at different parts of my model. Now, I can also use these buttons here to change to my orthographic views or to change back to my default perspective view. I can also use mouse gestures, and that's what we were talking about when I said 8 gestures. If I right-click in the viewport and drag in any direction, it lets me choose from 8 different default views. So I can choose my right view, for instance. Just drag all the way over it, and there we go to our right view. Left view, top view, or perspective. So in this case, right-clicking and going up to the diagonal right, diagonal top right, takes us back to our kind of home view, which I think is a really handy thing to know about. So with that, let's go ahead and get started modeling our coffee press. We'll be able to go over a lot more about the interface as we go.